Hi everyone, welcome to my channel if you're new here, or welcome back to my channel if you're trying to be a subscriber. Today's video is very exciting because I'm going to be talking about a bunch of things that I love. I've realised that we've had too much negativity on this channel lately. I find it so much easier to talk about things that I dislike over things that I love, or even things that I feel like middling about. This is not good because it means that I just end up kind of like ranting to you whenever I don't enjoy something, which is quite frequently. At the ripe old age of 25, I'm still trying to figure out what my reading taste actually is. Today's video, I'm going to be taking you through 5 books that I absolutely adored, that I've absolutely adored so far this year. Love all of these so much. They're either 5 stars or 4.5 stars. I have included a couple of rereads just because I feel like, I don't know, I want to promote these books to you, and I feel like it doesn't really matter if I read them before, if like you're hearing me talk about it for the first time. And some of these I read like a couple of years ago and stuff like that, so people who are new to my channel or have only been subscribed for a little while wouldn't be used to hearing me talk about these so much. This video is going to be about the best books that I've read in the first quarter of the year, so this is January, February and March, the top 5 books in those 3 months. I'm not going to touch April because I'm thinking that we could try and do this video, you know, 4 times throughout the year. Well, not 4 times, maybe like 3 times, and then the last quarter I won't tell you about the books I read across those 3 months because I'll give you my big like best books of the year. I'm hoping that in my best books of the year video you're not going to see many of these books. Really wanting to read some more 5 stars, you know. Probably some of these will end up in my best books of the year, but I'm hoping that we'll leave some of these behind and I can find even more books that are even better than these ones. But having said that, I do really love all of these very much. So for this video I thought it'd be nice to go in a little bit of a ranking order, and I thought that we would start with my least favourite, my 5th favourite book I've read this year, and this is a reread, but that is Throne of Glass by Sarah J Maas. I read this book originally in 2019, no, that's such a lie, 2022, and then I left such a big gap after finishing that one and then wanting to continue the series that I just needed to reread this book in order to continue the series. I feel like I'm just repeating myself. Follows Selena Sadothian. She is an assassin and she is imprisoned because of her crimes. And one day the prince of the kingdom comes to take her because he wants to sponsor her to be his champion in this competition to become the king's champion, basically be the king's personal assassin. Like I said, I read this book in 2022 and I gave it 3.5 stars. I really didn't think it was anything special. I was like kind of interested enough in the series to want to continue, and I have read the Avatar series by Sarah J Maas, so I knew that she could have something really good coming along with the series. I just hadn't got to it yet. But I was like minorly disappointed by how much I was not like obsessed with this book. Fast forward 2 years and I read this book again and I gave it 4.5 stars. So good. It is definitely like a traditional like competition style book. Selena is fighting against a bunch of other criminals, a bunch of thieves and murderers and things like that in order to become the king's champion, and it's very kind of brutal in a way that I think you don't see so much within YA nowadays, which was really interesting. And I just thought that it was so kind of like original and kept me interested the entire way through. I just loved pretty much every single second of it. I didn't quite get kind of 5-star feels, which is why this isn't a 5-star, but I'm sure, or I'm crossing my fingers, that at some point in the series I will find a 5-star. It's so close, it just has it all, and I'm so excited to continue with the rest of the series. Spoilers, but I did actually really love the second book, Crown at Midnight. I gave that 4.5 stars too. But we're not going to be talking about that until my next quarterly wrap up, unless it gets pushed down the list because I have a lot of 5 stars. But with the way that April's reading month's gone, I can't see that happening. We had a lot of duds, just wait for the wrap up. I'd say it's probably more like a 4.25, but I didn't feel right giving it a 4 because it's definitely more than that, so I settled on 4.5 and I'm very happy with it kind of sitting at that rating. So if you love fantasy, you haven't started the Throne of Glass series, or you love YA books in general, get to it. This is your sign. This is your sign to read this. So much fun. There's also like a subplot of romance in this book. It's actually like a very much a love triangle, which I know some people hate that, but actually my first time around reading this I didn't really focus on the romance at all. Second time around I felt like it was a lot more present. But yeah, I'm just so glad to have like reread this. I'm not sure what happened in the past for me to give it 3.5 stars. I think I didn't like the magic system for some reason, but I feel like maybe having a break from YA fantasy and then going back into it through, you know, such like a kind of cult classic, I had such a good time with it. I just got on really well with it. First book down. Okay, drumroll please. Book number 4. I mean, you've already seen it, didn't you? You just saw it then. Great. Finale by Stephanie Garber. There was no element of surprise there. This book is so good. This is the 3rd and final book in the Caraval series. I love how I just said this book was good when like obviously like this is my top 5 books of the year so far. 3rd and final book in the Caraval series, and also my favourite in the series. I gave it 4.5 stars and it was such a solid book. Again, the only reason why this isn't a 5 is because I just didn't get the 5-star feels. don't try and ask me what the 5-star feels are, because I fear that I may fail to answer you. But this was so much fun. It's another like absolute perfect YA book. I feel like I'm really kind of falling out of love with YA at the moment. I feel like it's just my age. So when a YA book hits, it like really hits, because it kind of stands out amongst the other like kind of mid books, if that makes sense. And I think as far as YA goes, this is just a perfect YA series. It's perfectly kind of like, it perfectly fits within like the age range and like what you would expect to be finding within a YA book. There's a romance in this series. There are several romances actually. It's like wholesome, but it's also like there's so much chemistry between the characters. Once they do fall in love, they like really love each other. It gave me butterflies still, you know. It's still like kind of sexy, but it's also very PG, if that makes sense. Not very PG. That makes it sound like it's like extremely conservative. It's not, but it's not spice every 3 pages is what I'm trying to say. I'm not going to tell you what this book is about because it is the 3rd and final book. I'll risk spoiling the first 2 books for you. First book follows Scarlett Dragner, and all of her life she's wanted to go to Caraval. Caraval is this game, kind of like, think of like a circus, like a dark magical circus, and it's hosted by this man called Legend, who nobody knows what he looks like, who he is, any of that. You can't go to Caraval unless you get an invitation. Every single year Scarlett writes to Legend. I don't know what address she sends it to, but that's what she does. She never gets a response from him, or she never gets like an invitation, and then one year she gets invited. Scarlett has a sister called Donatella, and one day Donatella gets kidnapped, and it turns out that Tella is the focus of the game. This year's Caraval is about trying to find Tella and the first person to get there. Scarlett obviously has a little advantage, but she also is completely out of her depth. She's very young, and she's obviously terrified about what happened to her sister, because this kind of idea bleeds into Caraval. That's like, how much of this is real and how much of it is just a game. There are kind of deadly consequences within this game, but while you're playing, they're made to seem like it's all in your head, you know, it's just like a show put on for you. Things definitely kind of cross over into the more kind of into a darker side. The second book, Legendary, is also about another kind of Caraval game, and the third book veered away from that. In the first book, I didn't love Scarlett, and she was the kind of, is this first person? No. It's third person. You like view the story through Scarlett's perspective. The second book followed Tella, and I really loved Tella, so I was worried going to this third book because I knew that it was going to be about Scarlett. Just wasn't excited about that. Also, it did set up for this like kind of love triangle thing, which I'm also not into. So that's all to say that I was a little bit worried going into this, but I did really love every single second, and I just thought it was amazing. I had a really satisfying ending. There were some really beautiful scenes. There were some like kind of high stakes, just all round. Really recommend this series. I haven't read the Once Upon a Broken Heart series yet. That's another series by Stephanie Garber. It's the follow-on from this one. Technically you're meant to read Caraval series before that, but if you don't, I feel like it's not that big a deal. But I'm definitely hoping to pick up Once Upon a Broken Heart soon, the first book in that series. It was actually on my TBR for April, but I just haven't got around to it yet. Who knows, maybe I will read it still. There's still time, I've got a week left. Okay, getting into the top 3. My top 3 reads of 2024 so far. These are all 5 stars. We have Normal People, another reread. I read this book in 2022. I think it's another 2022 book. 2022 was a real like flop of a reading year, but there were 2 books that were 5 stars to me, and I absolutely loved them both. One was The Idiot by Elif Batuman, which is now my favorite book of all time. Secondly, we had Normal People, and Normal People was like, it was close. It was definitely like a very solid 5-star read, and also different from The Idiot in a way because I had such a personal connection to this story. The reason why I decided to reread Normal People was because I bought a copy for someone for their birthday, and I decided to annotate it for them. I know, it's so cute. What a wonderful friend I am, I know. But all jokes aside, it was actually like a really wonderful experience to be able to gift them something kind of so personal like that, but also to experience rereading the book for the first time. Normal People follows Connell and Marianne. They are 2 teenagers. They're in very different kind of social circles, social classes, school social circles. Marianne's family is very wealthy, and Connell's mum and him are very much within the kind of working class, but they go to the same school, and their paths kind of cross because of this, and because Connell's mum is actually working for Marianne's parents. So from the offset, is that the right word? From the straight off the bat, there's definitely like major kind of power dynamics going on in their relationship. Over time, these 2 characters fall in love, but they're very kind of worried, I think on both sides, but particularly I think originally Connell's side, of how different they are from each other, kind of like interfering with their lives apart from one another. Connell is very cool in school. Marianne is definitely kind of on the outskirts. When the characters go to college, opposite happens. Marianne is very involved and she's really doing well, but then Connell is struggling to fit in and very isolated in that experience. You see the characters come in and out of each other's lives from like secondary school until the end of college, what starts to be beyond that. It is a really kind of moving emotional story just because it is incredibly introspective. It's so much about the individual characters and what they're dealing with, but also this absolute draw to one another that is just, I mean, I want to tear up thinking about it. So that's just like, that says it all, you know. They have such a connection, but like their ability to be together is so non-existent, but they can't help but be in each other's lives. They are each other's person, but at the same time they just can't be. It is like a slightly frustrating book because a lot of it is about miscommunication, but it's also just so beautiful and so realistic to what, you know, relationships can look like in real life. What they have is definitely kind of, well, they are dating at some points, but it's definitely kind of like a situationship. By the way, the lighting is horrendous because it's literally pouring with rain outside, so I feel like I'm always excusing the lighting, not the writing. The writing in this is great because I live in England and it's spring, and so we're going, you know. I'm not sure how different I felt about this book on the reread. I know that I definitely still loved it, and I still read it really, really quickly. I read it within a couple of days the first time round, and this time round, despite me annotating every single page, obviously this is not the copy that I read from on the reread because that was gifted to someone, but I literally was underlining almost every single word or like writing in the book on every single page, and usually that means I would take a lot longer to read the book than normal. But I actually read this still very quickly, so I just was very much engrossed and loved the story just as much this time around. I was also looking for, within my reread and within my annotation system, evidence of Connell's love for Marianne and Marianne's love for Connell in ways that are not kind of like explicitly stated within the book, like little bits of their like habits and the way they just like look out for each other. And so I really kind of loved being able to get more from this book than I got the first time around. I did write down here actually on my notes, there's so much more to this book than first meets the eye. You're obviously like a reread, you probably will pick up on different things because you just like are a different person this time around, but I feel like this is a book you could really like chomp into, really dig into, and I can see why it's like a literary fiction book and why it's such a top seller. So no one people, I've talked about that forever, but let's just move on. Book number 2 I loved. I don't actually have a physical copy, which is devastating, but I do definitely plan on getting one at some point along the way, just whenever I can, you know, spare some money towards it. And that is Legends and Latte by Travis Bauldree. Totally different vibe from Normal People. This is another fantasy book. It's actually classed as the cozy fantasy, which is like a subgenre of fantasy, if you didn't know that already. The kind of joy I get out of fantasy is definitely the setting, especially like medieval kind of Eurocentric fantasies. I just love the world and I love being able to escape into that, you know, like that's such a boring thing to say, but it's true. That's definitely kind of what I look for when I'm reading a book like that. It's funny actually because I'm a very character driven reader, as you will see from my love for Normal People, but I also think that the world is very important. Legends of Lattes follows an orc, and she has been kind of like a crusader, and she puts down her battle axe and she decides to basically retire at an early age and to move to a new city where she is going to start a coffee shop. This seems like not a very, you know, profound idea. This city that she's moving to doesn't know what coffee is, like they've never tried it in their lives, and so you see her try and introduce something new to these people while also like battling with wanting to be different from her past self. She wants to like be a different person, but there's also so much of her nature that is in being kind of more brutal and having like physical strength and stuff like that that's not so much needed in her coffee shop adventures. She goes to this city and everybody is a little bit put off by her, also like, what the heck are you doing, you're new here, not willing to help her. But over time she gradually meets friends who all kind of get involved in her business and like help support her work, and it's the most beautiful story. There are arguments about this book that say that it's really boring. I don't think so at all. They say that it's low stakes, but the stakes are obviously lower than like a fantasy book that's about like a battle or I don't know, some like perilous journey. But at the same time, Viv's life is on the line like multiple times, which is not, you know, that's just like not low stakes normal life for most of us. Kind of like hunted because of something that she possesses, which I'm not going to go into because I feel like it's slight spoilers. There's a really lovely kind of light sapphic romance in this. Also obviously so much description of coffee and the food. There's a little baker that's employed by Viv, whose name I actually didn't say. She's the orc, and he's a little rat, well not little, like a 3 foot tall rat. He's the baker in the kitchen, and one of my favorite characters. He was so precious. The descriptions of the kind of cinnamon buns he made and all the various treats and things like that, mouth-watering. You're gonna want to like sit in a coffee shop while you read this book. That would be just the ultimate vibes. But yeah, I love this. A really kind of heartwarming story about what matters in life, but set within this really cool like different world where all these different characters of different creatures and things like that, and I just thought it was beautiful. So highly recommend Legends and Lattes if you want something along those lines. Final book, book number 1. This is very different from the rest because it's actually non-fiction, and I know some people are gonna like kind of like balk at that, but you're just gonna have to like bear with me a little bit on this because this is such like one of these books that was just right. I feel like it was written for me, you know. The world is going to love this. Up from the Basement with the Strokes by Raphael. Raphael is a music producer, and amongst other things, obviously, he produced the Strokes' first 2 albums. He kind of quote unquote like discovered them. He then like adopted them into his world and created what we have from them. So those are the 2 albums, Is This It and Room on Fire. My exposure is out of control right now. I just realized it's because I'm not on like film. My camera has like a video recording setting, but I'm on the photo setting. I hope it hasn't been horrible the whole way through. I'm so sorry. Yeah, this book is a memoir about his time with the Strokes, but it's also about Gordon's life. Like, it's more kind of autobiographical. It starts when he's young. It ends a couple of years ago. When did he publish this book? 2022, January 2022. He writes a little note at the back of the book, and that's where his story kind of like rounds off. But obviously he's still alive and living and working, you know. You really see the struggle he had in entering the music scene. He had his own band, and it's very much about him kind of paving a way himself within an industry that he absolutely adores and he has such a real passion for. It's not an easy industry by any means to get into, and he actually doesn't have the success with the Strokes until he's like 30 or in his 30s, and I thought that was such a refreshing way of seeing someone who obviously is so successful within his craft but didn't get to that point without absolutely grinding for like many years in order to get there. If you've seen La La Land, you know that scene where Sebastian, the male love interest, Ryan Gosling's character, takes Mia, who's Emma Stone's character, the female love interest, to a jazz bar because he's trying to tell her about jazz, why he loves jazz. Very much a B-movie moment, but he's sitting there and he is just like electric with his love and his like absolute undying passion, like this effervescent energy in talking about something he adores, and that is jazz. And he's sitting there and he's just so animated and so involved in it, and he just loves it. One of my favorite ever films, but it's also such a beautiful scene of someone just like loving something and not being ashamed to like show their love for that thing and to try and convince someone else of what that thing means to them, but also to the world and everything like that, the importance of that thing. It's just a classic thing of anybody talking about something that they adore, but that's such a perfect example of it. This is what that book is. You feel Gordon's like excitement and like vitality simply because of like the career that he does. Every single time he's in the studio, you feel him kind of like grabbing at all the various like different tools and knobs and things like that on the systems, trying to create something, having so much like kind of inspiration behind it. You get that side of it, but you also get the struggle of trying to create what he does, and I don't know, I just thought it was beautiful. Plus, having said this already, I'm a massive fan of the Strokes. I would have enjoyed this book had it been about like, I feel like I'm speaking really quickly because I'm excited about this book. I would have enjoyed this book had he been working with any music artist, but the fact that a large chunk of it was about one of my favorite ever bands was just everything, you know. Like I said in the wrap up, in the month I finished this book, I desperately need every single one of my favorite bands, music producers, to do this, to write a book and to tell us everything, because he really tells you all of his secrets. If you have any if you have any interest in the music scene or in producing specifically, this is the book for you. I love it. Also, the first like third of this book, we weren't even discussing the Strokes, and I was just immediately extremely engaged. I just loved it so much. Okay, 5 books. That was a little bit exhausting. 5 books that I really truly have loved this year. So excited to read more and love more. That'd be great. Those are the 4 plus Legends and Lattes. I recommend all of these. You can go back over my wrap-ups for January, February and March if you're interested in what else I read, because there were some books that were like other 4.5s and like other 4 stars that I really loved, but just like didn't quite make my top 5, but I still would highly recommend them. And maybe if I don't get many Goodreads over the next months, they might end up being in my best books of 2024 as well. They're just great, and I wish I could talk about everything, but I did want to kind of narrow it down to these top 5. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up. Let me know that you did. Subscribe if you want to stick around and see me read more in the future, see me get to more books and hopefully love more books and share them with you. I'm also going to be filming a worst books of the year this year, which I'm excited for because there's already a couple of contenders for that list. No, it's been amazing talking about things I love. Thank you for hearing me out, especially if you're here at the end, because that's just like insane to me. You know, the fact you'd stick out this long video with me just ranting about things that make me happy, being Sebastian in La La Land. Okay, I'm literally clutching these to my chest. I'm gonna go. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for being here. Sending my love to you from here to wherever you may be in the world. I'll see you in a couple of days for a new video because I post every single Wednesday and Saturday. This next video is gonna be my TBR for the next month. Hopefully finding some books that I'm also gonna love. But yeah, lots of fun content on its way to you as always. Bye bye.